Chapter 28. What They Know Now. Summary. In the search of knowledge, the Terrans dive deeper into the bowels of the market. They might just get more than they bargained for. Ochako didn't know why Katsuki and Deku were so ready to leave before they found out everything they could. It's just your friendly neighborhood black market. It's not like people are getting stabbed left and right. Honor among thieves and all that. Plus, Mina was right. They really needed this information. Not only to make a start on tearing down the organizations that had caused them and others so much pain, but to protect themselves. They didn't even have a name to put to their suffering. They would have no clue what to avoid and look out for without even a name. Ochako thought Deku of all people would understand the power of knowledge. Usually he would be the one trying to learn more, but he had been more cautious ever since the abduction. Everyone had been affected by what they went through, and they all had their bad days. But on Izuku's bad days, he was such an anxious mess. Even the slightest noise would cause him to flinch and look in the direction of the sound with wide, fearful eyes. It was disturbingly like how he was at the beginning of the school year. Everyone had been getting better, having fewer bad days, but at this point in their trip, Izuku really seemed out of it. Ochako kind of felt bad, but she'd make sure to stay strong for him until this was over. They really needed that information. The six of them were just wandering around the cramped pathways without a clear destination in mind at this point. Ochako made sure to keep an ear out for any mention of alien trafficking or cockroach sentience. Unlike the vibrant and lively air of the main market, this part of the plaza was almost stifling. Sunlight filtered faintly through fabric awnings, bathing the area solely in red and orange tinted light. Smoking aliens filled the air with a faint lavender-scented fog. Eventually, Ochako heard something. Maybe it wasn't anything important, but it made her stop in her tracks. The rest of the group paused, and she shushed them before they could speak, listening to the alien words coming from a nearby duo. Sure you're not looking to buy? I've got a great deal on a new shipment of Death Wordle Kabuchum suppressants. Those little insects have got a monopoly on the market, but I've got an in. Not sure how long it'll last for, though, so you gotta act quick. The alien that spoke was a luminescent blue, the color of glowing plankton back on Earth. Large fins adorned their head, coupled with a generally aquatic look, more reminiscent of deep sea fish than anything that lives in the light of the sun, however. Then, they pulled out a vial of a sickeningly familiar, toxic green liquid. Ochako didn't even see the alien the vendor was talking to leave. She could only stare at what was in the aquatic sentient's webbed fingers. The bane of their existence for months, keeping them trapped and helpless so they could be transported without hassle. The vendor was selling quirk suppressants, and from the sound of it, they had gotten it directly from their original abductors. Izuku froze as soon as his eyes landed on the familiar vial. It was silly. He couldn't use one for all to begin with, but that didn't stop his lungs from constricting. No, he couldn't do this right now. He needed to focus. The others voted that they wanted to find out some information on the traffickers. While Izuku agreed that it was something they needed, he didn't agree that this was the way to go about it, nor did he agree that this was the time to do it. He was barely keeping the tangled ball of anxiety growing in his gut together. But he and Kachan were outvoted. He knew he wasn't quite thinking straight, so he was gonna trust the others with this. Mina was the first to speak up. Hey, what did you say you were selling? We might be interested if we heard right. Izuku could tell she was trying to be smooth, but her hands were shaking. Izuku didn't even think he could speak if he tried. He couldn't imagine trying to put up a front like Mina was. He was completely useless right now. But she was so brave and good at talking to other people. Izuku didn't know how she did it. The luminescent alien turned their head her way. Say, haven't seen you lot around here before. What use would you have for some suppressants? Mina scoffed stiffly. Is that really any of your business? Heard you got it directly from the source. How'd you manage that? Well, the sentient seemed to glow, literally, under the supposed praise. Met a particular individual recently who's willing to distribute privately for a discounted price. Those Luckaberries try to keep their Shootsum product close to their thoraxes, but I'm not sure how long I'll be able to sell at this price. Mina paused to think. She looked like she was rolling the words around in her head, thinking about how to phrase whatever she was going to say. You're right about us being new in town. Still learning the language. What word did you say before product? She said as unsuspiciously as she seemed to be able to manage. The sentient still eyed the group oddly, though. How are you looking to buy some suppressants yet? You don't know the word. Now it was time for Denki to butt in. Enlighten us and you just might make your sale. Don't mean no disrespect. Well, Jilitsums are like powers that Death Worlders have. Every Death World has slightly different Jilitsum, but there can be similarities. One I know about is this race that can manipulate water with their minds. The females can also manipulate ice, while the males can manipulate vapor. There's another species that's similar, but they can summon fire from seemingly nowhere, both the males and females. Some Jilitsums are really off the walls. The Glockaberry's Jilitsum is their Jilitsum suppressing venom. They come from a particularly nasty death world, and are the only species whose Jilitsum's like that, so they have a monopoly. They have an infamous trafficking ring that focus on death worlders because of their Jilitsum. Quirk. The word was quirk. Death worlders had quirks, and the cockroach aliens, the Glockberry's quirk was the toxic green quirk suppressant. But it seemed like other Death World species only had one quirk for the whole species. What? Why did the Death Worlders develop quirks? Izuku found himself stuttering. And are there species where every member has a unique quirk? I'm not a damn elementary school teacher, the sentient huffed, though they seemed to be marginally enjoying themselves. The leading theory to why Death Worlds have quirks is the presence of Elizanteri, a unique substance found only on Death Worlds. It can rip apart atoms just by proximity alone. It's even present in the planet's crust. It mutates DNA, which is why people think it's the cause of Death Worlders' quirks. Death Worlders aren't called Death Worlders for no reason. Pray you may never have the misfortune of landing on one. The group just had to stand there, closed-mouthed smiles on their face, pretending that they definitely were not Death Worlders. And Death Worlders where each sentient has a unique quirk? I don't even want to know how volatile and unstable their genetics would have to be for their DNA to mutate with each generation. That sounds terrifying. Now you might as well imagine a Death Worlder species that evolved quirks so late into their evolution they had already made it out of the planet's orbit. Horrifying. Just keep smiling. Absolutely, not suspiciously. Ochako started, obviously slightly unsettled. Backing up a little, what was the Glockberry's trafficking group called? At this point, the aquatic sentient was starting to look done with them. I already told you I'm not a damn teacher. You're obviously not looking to buy, so just leave before someone here makes you. Ochako was silent at the threat. She just slowly turned to lead the group away out of the sketchier part of the market. They had obviously overstayed their welcome by the odd looks they were getting. At least they were finally leaving. Izuku's short-lived captivation by the concept of Death Worlder quirks was pushed out of the way by his nearly overwhelming anxiety. He needed to get out of here. The walk out passed in a blur, but once they finally breached the market's borders and stood in the completely quiet streets, Izuku gave Ochako the look. Out of everyone here, she was the only one from before that was actually in his regular friend group, and therefore was the only one who properly knew how to deal with his day-to-day anxiety. As soon as they made eye contact, Ochako knew what to do. "Hey, you guys check out the normal market for a few more minutes. Me and Deku were just going to take a quick break in that quiet alley over there." Kosuke gave Izuku a knowing look before he let out an agreeing grunt and herded the rest of the group away before they could ask questions. Izuku smiled lightly as they walked away before Ochako quickly led him to the quiet space. The small alley wasn't really an alley, probably more of a back street, but it was blissfully still and quiet. Izuku sank immediately to the ground and tucked his head in between his knees. His breaths were shaky, and he could feel he was verging on an anxiety attack. "I'm so sorry, Deku," Ochako guiltily said. "I didn't realize you were feeling so bad. I should have paid more attention." No, this wasn't her fault. It wasn't Ochako's fault that he was falling apart just after being near people. It was his fault for being so anxious. It wasn't her fault he was so useless. Nothing bad was going to happen. It was just his overthinking brain trying to torment him. "It's not your fault, Ochako," he stuttered out. She didn't need to feel bad for his own weakness. Ochako walked closer to him. I know, it's just..." All of a sudden, she stopped and whipped her head around to the way they had come from. There, looming in the dimly lit alley, was a tall blue alien with octopus-like skin and tentacle hair. But the part that left Izuku stuttering for breath was the way their face split open to reveal flaps covered in row after row of small, needle-like teeth. It was like something out of a horror movie. Izuku was so petrified by the sentient in front of him. He didn't realize there was one sneaking up behind him until he felt the pain reverberate through his skull, and the blackness of unconsciousness took over his vision.